Hi there, MTSU friends. Welcome. Happy Tuesday. In our next hour or so, we're going to take a look at new quiz essentials. Essentially, what that's like to set up a new quiz from basically start to finish. So, we're going to understand how that setup consists of, or what that setup consists of. We'll take a look at managing your questions and your quiz settings, the basics of utilizing item banks. These would be groups of questions that you can choose to pull from, to have Canvas pick one out of a group to insert randomly into a quiz, for example. That is possible. You can also set up accommodations and moderations as well inside of new quizzes and be able to access various reports. So let's get right into the task of getting started with your new quizzes. So inside a course, such as I have set up here, I have already pulled in some resources from the Commons. And I want to point that out because inside of those resources there, among the many great options you can choose from, would be a sample new quiz. So just so that you have this picture in your mind, when you have that course template pulled into your course, you'll see a module one and then an item here, which is marked with a rocket ship. The rocket ship symbol is the symbol for a new quiz. Now, this new quiz, which you can't see until you get past this particular screen, this is where a lot of the settings are set. You can see the actual quiz if you click on the build button, which is the place where you add in your instructions and then eventually your questions in the plus button here. But this is such a beautiful layout that I want you to keep this quiz nice and neat and simply just duplicate this quiz so that you use the duplicates with students. Just like in the old days when we had master copies and you would keep one copy nice and neat and then you give the copies to students. So like that. So I'm going to suggest that we duplicate this quiz and then add it to a module that you'd be building out. So clicking on the quizzes link here, you enter what's called the quizzes index, which is a list of all quizzes that you have inside of your course. Here is that quiz that we're trying to duplicate. So accessing that option here in the three dots, you're going to choose this duplicate. This is the third option in that menu. We're going to give Canvas a minute to think about it and make that copy for you. Just remember that it's marked with this additional word copy. So when I want to add that to a module that I'm building out, then I'm going to remember what it's called. So at this point, I can click on the plus button here. I hope that that's obvious here. It appears grayed out right now because I just clicked it, but click on the plus button there. And then in the drop down here, you're going to choose quiz, and then you're going to pick this copy. So there it is right here. And this is that quiz that you would want to build out with students. So this is a great way to make use of that beautifully built out quiz that has built in all of our best practices for chunking instructions for students without you having to do too much effort. Now, once you click on that link in that quiz copy, you're going to obviously want to modify the true title of it. So I'm going to go ahead and call this I'm just going to call this a review quiz. You title yours whatever you want to do, like so. Now you notice here you have a drop down which appears grayed out. It's called the quiz type. Um, Now, because I made a duplicate of that quiz that was already part of the resources from the Commons, I don't have the option to change this. Um, but just so you know, right, there are different types of new quizzes you can have now. You can have the graded quiz, which is the academic quiz for a grade that you think of when you think of quizzes. But there is also now an option to create a survey. It's just that you won't be able to do so by duplicating that quiz from the quizzes area. So just to show you what that's like. If I go to the quizzes link here and then click on quiz/survey here, just to show you the option, right? You can have a survey that either delivers a set number of small points that students earn automatically when they submit the survey, or you have an ungraded survey, which obviously doesn't deliver any points. But I'm going to assume that you're interested in that academic, I need to find out what these students know about this quiz, in which case we're going to go ahead and leave that as a graded quiz. But if you ever need information about it, there's a little modal for that. Right here, you indicate your total number of points for the quiz. So you feel free to put in whatever number of points you wish. Now, this will be the total number of points that this quiz is allocated in the gradebook, as you would think. However, you have the option to make it so that your individual quiz questions can add up to a different number. So, for example, this quiz can still be out of 100 for students, but maybe you only have 5 questions, and each of those 5 questions are worth 1 point each. I know, extreme example, but to show you that that is possible, so that if a student gets all 5 questions correct, with each question worth 1 point, the student would still see 100 out of 100. So this allows for Canvas to scale the grade. So if your question totals didn't exactly add up to 100, you putting in 100 points would make it so Canvas calculates that grade correctly. And then in the drop down here, you indicate the assignment group that this quiz goes in. These assignment groups should already be set up inside the assignments link in your course navigation. But this is you placing this particular quiz in its appropriate category, which I'm guessing are most likely set up from your syllabus and what it says there about your assignment categories. So you pick that correct assignment group here. Here's where you tell Canvas how the grade's going to be displayed. So points is perfectly fine. But you can also choose percentage, or if you have what's called the grading scheme set in the course, you can have it show a letter grade to students. There is also an option here to do complete, incomplete. Just be wary of this because if you have say a 100-point quiz, and this displays grade as a check mark for complete or an X for incomplete. Numerically, it means they either get 100 or 0. So, judge based upon your situation if you want that to be a possibility for you. Otherwise, I think most folks would just leave things as either points or percentage. Now, if you'd like for this to be a practice kind of opportunity, you can choose to not have this count towards the final grade, in which case check off that box there or not. And then move on past submission type. You can't change anything here. Turn on anonymous grading or annotations if you need. For most people, that's not needed. And then right here, you'll want to add the due dates. Adding a due date is necessary if you need for the due date to appear on the calendar for students, which I'm guessing you do. So you go through the calendar and pick that due date. If needed, you can set parameters on that. So if it's due on the 27th, I can make it so that the quiz is first available on the 23rd and then shuts off, I don't know, March 4th. So after March 4th, it's not possible to complete that quiz. But if you have, say, extenuating circumstances, inside the course, you can have most people have that due date, but then enter in a name for that student. And that one student can have a different due date that you enable here. If you have any kind of written work, like an essay question in the quiz, you can create or add a rubric from here. Otherwise, if you are satisfied with this for now, you can hit save. Save just means you're brought back to where the quiz originated, which would be right here. But we don't have any questions, so I'm obviously not going to publish this at the moment. If you go back inside the quiz, You would have to build out your questions using the build button that you see here. And so this brings us to that particular quiz that we're about to try to dress up here. All right. So let's go ahead and move on into what it's like to build out this particular quiz here. So just to give you the Vanna White tour, you have the course nav menu, which you can hide if you want to have more room on this area. This area here, nothing for you to do right now here. This is called the question navigator. And there's some functions here that can allow you to move questions around without having to scroll up and down on the page. You also have various tabs here where you can manage aspects of the quiz, a way to access your item banks once you have those developed. But right here is where the business of the quiz first starts, right? So you see here two pencils. In the top pencil, click on the pencil there, and here's where you can edit that title. And here in the pencil is where you can access the rich content editor. Now, you feel free to make these as interesting or as functional as is required. So once you get a hold of that, you're gonna definitely want to remove things like instructor notes because that's just going to be extra information. Add new information here. You can also add links, images, video, documents, YouTube. Do whatever you need to make this interesting or as interesting as is needed. And then you would check for accessibility and then save your settings right here. So it's going to be an obviously important part of this, right, is to designate those expectations for students inside of your quiz. The next thing you're going to want to do is to think about your settings. Your settings live right here inside of the settings tab. Now, if you remember, we duplicated an existing quiz, so the settings got copied over, but you can still modify these settings for this quiz if you want. Many of these are self-explanatory. Shuffling questions, answers. You can choose to have questions appear one at a time or all 50 questions all at once. You can even turn on a password. That's helpful if you want students to be physically present in the room while you and a group of TAs walks around and proctors, in which case you can enter in that password, whatever it is. You can even write that password on the blackboard or the whiteboard at the front or have TAs announce it. And so what that does is it allows just those students who have the password to access the quiz. Somebody sitting in their dorm room is not or should not have access to that quiz access code, even if the availability dates let them do that. You can set a time limit or not. If desired, you can turn on detect multiple sessions. So it lets students know if you're accessing the quiz from your browser and your mobile device, we're going to maybe let that activity be visible to admins. But you do have to turn this on now. You can't turn this on in the middle of the quiz and expect it to function as needed. You can allow a calculator if you want. You can choose to show custom feedback on the results screen that students are shown when they submit their quiz. Otherwise, you get generic messages like results are hidden per instructor settings. If you want something to be more friendly, right, a friendlier message, you can enter that custom feedback message here. You can also disable PDF type document uploads. If you have a concern with, if you think maybe students might be passing PDFs from one student to another to use in quizzes, you can disable the ability to upload those PDFs. You can also allow multiple attempts, in which case you should designate how many attempts, right? And then at the bottom here, you can determine how much information students can see after they submit a quiz. Now, if I move the toggle off like that, it means nothing is hidden. So on that results screen, the students will see the questions and the answers and what they put. They see everything and their score. If you move the toggle on over, you can choose to show most or some or no information. If you don't want them to see any information, this is what you have to have on, right? So completely hide results from students so they will not see the questions or their answers or the correct answer. You can choose to show students how they did, like 2 points out of 4, and they will always see the time for the submission, like this took you 2 minutes, 47 minutes, 47 seconds. And you can also choose to show the questions. Just be aware that there's more decisions to be made if you do that. This just shows the questions, but not what the student put unless you move the toggle on over. You can choose to show it for all attempts or only after their last attempt, for example. You can even designate a date when they can see their student responses. So they can only see their responses, for example, within a 24-hour window, but you have to designate the window. You also see here that this only lets them see what they put down, but not the correct answer unless you move the toggle. So I'm saying like you can have a lot of information showing, but with more information showing means more decisions that you have to make. And you can also show personalized feedback that you enter when you create the questions or not. It's up to you. Otherwise, for a very secure situation, this is it. Hide results, but don't have anything else showing. On the other hand, if you have this on, everything shows. I hope that that makes sense. Now, you saw that message appear at the top, right? Success, your settings have been saved. So as soon as you make these changes, Canvas auto saves all of these for you. So this is a good point as any to pause here and see if you have any questions. Still thinking about it, still pondering. Yep. All right. I'm sure more questions will come to you, right? Like we just started after all. Um, Feel free to just use the chat for that. All right. So we have here some directions, but we don't actually have any questions. You can add questions individually here through the plus button, where you can see a variety of question types that you can use. You can also use in conjunction with this other item type called a stimulus, which is a reading, a video, some artifact for students to study that accompanies questions that are off to the side. You can also create a text block with messages to students. So let's say you have a section 1 and a section 2. Like, section 1 is multiple choice, section 2 is essay questions. You can use a text block to indicate the top of section 1 and then the top of section 2. Just keep in mind that these do shuffle just as if they were questions. So if you do need to have discrete sections in your quizzes, I would not turn on question shuffling in that case. So we unfortunately don't have enough time to cover every single possible quiz question, but you'll see that the workflow is pretty much all the same. So when you select on, we'll do the classic multiple choice. This form pops up here, And although it starts to blink right when it says question title, this is not where the question goes. I know you want to put the question here, but you don't. You would actually put the question where it says question stem. And that rich content editor pops up. So imagine if this pertains to you, right? Because it doesn't always. You can have a written question, but if it suits you, you can add links to the question, images, video. Imagine how powerful that can be for a performance class, world languages, fine arts, that kind of thing, where students have to watch the video that's in the quiz question. Can add documents, all kinds of things. As a former chemistry instructor, I added data tables. So I would create a data table here and ask students questions about the information in the data table. I'm saying you can be very creative with this if you wanted to. So just for today, I'm just going to I will create a chemistry question. Like so. Now, you may be wondering then, Helen, what's the point of this question title then? Because it makes me want to put the question there, but you told me not to do that. While the question goes here under question stem, consider a question title as an opportunity to remind yourself about what the question is. So almost like an informal tag. Students don't see what you put here, so this is entirely for you. If you want to note for yourself, for example, this is a question about nitrogen trifluoride, because chemistry folks, if you're on the call, you understand. I don't want to add too many questions about nitrogen trifluoride. So I might put a tag like this so that when I see this in a list of questions, I remember without having to open the question, oh, this is about this molecule. Now, it is optional, so you don't have to add a title, but it can be helpful to find this question later. And then where it says possible answers is where you type in all of your possible answers. For multiple choice in particular, you can use the rich content editor to enter in your choices. So imagine you could have a picture as a choice. So you can have four different pictures. You can have four different videos, four different documents, four different data tables. Um, again, you can be really creative if you wanted to. But I won't be for today. I'll go ahead and type in um, all of the possible answers. And by the way, this circle being here means this is the correct answer. If you wish, you can just click on the circle here to indicate that that's the correct answer. But you do you. I also hate that I am now having to think about this. Um, so I'll go ahead and enter in my choices here. And you can add additional choices through the links. Now you saw there was mention of showing feedback back in the settings, right? Again, this might not be pertinent to your use case, but if I'm constructing, say, a practice review, right? Like a practice semester exam, where I want students to see the feedback and realize, oh, that's why that's wrong, or great, I got that right. You can enter in your personalized feedback in the speech bubbles. So for example, this is correct. So in this speech bubble, I'm going to put a message to that effect. And as you enter in that feedback, the speech bubble fills up to let you know you've got a comment there. Now, tetrahedral is the wrong answer. And here I might want to enter in a reference to the textbook, where this is discussed, or explain in detail why this is wrong. And you just go on through to the rest of your choices, add in that custom message, and it's saved there for all time. Now, based upon the question type, you can have different options show here. You can have, for example, a show on-screen calculator here. And I hope you remember this option was also possible in the overall settings. So this allows for a situation where I can have in the settings no calculator allowed. I mean, these settings up here. But for one question, I'm allowing a calculator, right? So maybe only one question out of the 20 actually displays a calculator for people to use, in which case you choose that. In the same way, there's also an option to shuffle choices. So you can have in the settings, all questions do not have shuffle choices except for this one, in which case you can check that box off here. Unique to multiple choice is the possibility of vary points by answer. So we'll pretend that this is a similar situation. I can make basically 2 points awarded for this answer and 1 point for that answer. And depending on what you choose, let's say I choose shuffle choices, you might have additional options pop up. So when I choose shuffle choices, I can lock distractors. This is relevant for, all of the above or none of the above, where you want all of the above to always be last, right? So in which case, lock all of the above. And then right here, you have the possibility of adding this to an item bank. So this would be setting up for a situation where you have groups of questions and Canvas randomly picks. And I do recommend you take care of this while you're setting up the question. You can do it after, but I think it's easier if you just do it now when you're in the quiz making mode. So if you have such a question and you want to put this or start a new item bank, you can click on Add to Bank. And if this is your first time making a bank, you can make the bank and put this question in the bank at the same time. This is actually a time saver. So when I click on Add, this question will save. And if I need to edit it again, which you can, click on the pencil for it here. You'll be told that you have to edit it in the bank. But here is where you can make your changes. You can even add additional tags like molecular shapes or any other search terms or, terms that help you keep your banks organized. And right over here, you may have the option to add general feedback too. So for any incorrect answer, you might say, students come see me for office hours, or general feedback regardless of what the student put down. And then now when you save it, you now have a new item bank made, plus you've got one question in the bank already. All right. So as I've said, the options that you see here, it depends based upon the choice of question that you put down. All right, so we're half an hour in. Let me go ahead and pause. Do you have any questions? Good questions about ProctorU. I would not have access to ProctorU, I'm sorry. Otherwise, I'd be happy to show you that. Quizzes in D2L, can they be migrated to Canvas? You can, although it's probably best to do this. Let me go back inside of settings here. One way to get your D2L quizzes into Canvas is to go in through the course settings. So when you do import course content, there's a drop down here where you can, let me scroll down here. Uh, if you have your quizzes as a QTI file, it does have to be in this format, you can pull in all of your questions in this way, and then they should be accessible inside of, it's an area of your course called item banks. So I would check, right? I don't know where your questions come from specifically, like if they come from a textbook publisher, for instance, but most of those publishers should be able to get you a QTI file that you can import. Great question. And I don't blame you. Like you might not want to rebuild everything. Same workflow. You can go into settings here and then in import under content type. You just have to scroll though, but you have to choose QTI zip file. And then you drag it in here. As a matter of fact, I think I can show you. I might have a file. Let's see. Oh, here we are. And then you just have to wait for the import to be available. All right.
The Helen, the import with the QTI, it really depends if they may have to
Okay.
export it through the actual D2L, but it's still got, because of the classic quizzes, new quizzes thing, it still sometimes doesn't pull everything over. So if you have quizzes that aren't coming over, just let us know and we can look into it.
Okay. Great call out there. So there's that QTI. It came in as a quiz. So when I click on that quiz and kind of go to build, oh, I think I need to take a look at this bank. Item banks can be made visible inside of settings. So just so that you know, because I know you can't see item banks here. If you go to navigation, you can move the item banks option from the bottom to the top. Now, don't worry, students can't see this even if it looks visible to them. So then when I click on item banks here, see there's that bank. So this is telling me there might be an issue with the questions in that bank, so I might have to try again. Another option is to make a bank from here and then import your questions directly into the new bank. So I'd have to look for it here. And then once inside the bank, there's an option here where you can import your QTI file, which does the same thing. So we're placing that file just explicitly into a single bank. So there's that option there too. Okay. Let's go ahead and take a look at item banks since we were just thinking about it. So I think it's a good idea if you plan on using item banks extensively to make sure that item banks is at least visible to you. Again, students can't see item banks. See, it's gone when I go into student view. So I'm going to go back into my quiz and show you you can access your banks even from inside of a quiz. So I'm going to go ahead and do this from the review quiz here. See, there's that question there. Now, if you have questions in item banks, you can access them here. There's a button for that. See, there's my library tutorial quiz. Or when you click on the plus button here, there is a comparable button. Notice it's the same icon, right? It's the same shape. So it leads you to the same location. Now, though you can make item banks here, you can make an item bank from inside a quiz too. So in which case you can click on that plus button, click on the envelope here, and then click on plus item bank. So you could make that bank first if you prefer. And I would also recommend too, right, just so that it makes it easier for you to find your banks later, to go ahead and check off this box to share this with your course. Because when you access the main list of banks, I know you have in mind the one bank like you need to get to, but you don't always find it here just right off the bat. So this does enable you to search. So if you click on the drop down here where it lets you filter the list of banks, you can then choose this course and see there's that bank that I just made because I shared it with this course. So it's right here. Okay. So when you do have item banks set up like this, let me go back here. And let's say you locate a specific bank. I'm going to pick a bank from another course here. When you have questions already present inside of the bank, you can pick and choose questions from the bank. Like I can just click this plus button to go ahead and add it to the quiz here. So that's if I want every single student to see that question, right? Or if you just want to add all the questions, so this bank has 4 questions, you can click this all random button here. And now you see this new section popped up. It says all questions pulled from bank, et cetera, et cetera. So in the place of this section, students would see all 4 questions from the bank be placed in their quiz. And if you have settings set up so that they see questions out of order, then they don't have to see them in the order that they're presented in the bank. Now, that's if you want them to see all 4 questions. If you want it that so that Canvas picks randomly, like 2 out of the 4. Once you have added the bank to the quiz, and so you see something like this appear, you'll now have to go back into the pencil here and just tell Canvas, no, 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 I was, just kidding. I wanted you to randomly select questions. So maybe I want just 2 out of the 4, right? So 2 with 1 point per question, and then I click done. And now Canvas will pick randomly 2 out of the 4 for every submission. So I'll show you that one more time here. Just want to kind of capture that for yourself. Click on the plus button here. Search through the item banks you have. And just so that you know, these banks actually are in a different MTSU course that I have. So as long as they're your banks, you can use banks from different courses you have access to. So I'm just going to pick this bank. No, I'll pick this bank. So I see the 3 questions in the bank. Here's where I can add all of them. Now we see here all questions pulled from bank, right? And then now I click on the pencil here and just choose randomly select so I can pick 1 out of the 3 that will appear in the quiz here. All right. There's other aspects I want to share with you here regarding item banks, but let me stop here and pause if you've got a question. Yeah, a lot of my clients like Respondus, but I know, this is going to depend on what MTSU has made available to you. Oh, you have Respondus. Never mind. Do that then. Other questions before we kind of highlight some other functions of item banks? All right, then. So other things you can do with item banks. So for example, from the item bank list, um, you'll see all of your banks here listed. So they start out with numerical order and then alphabetical. You see information about each bank and the number of questions within. You also see several controls right here. We all know what the trash can does. Don't hit the trash can. Edit here is this pencil, which lets you edit the name of the bank. You also have here 2 other controls. So let's choose this one right here, the second one. This is the option to share item banks. So when I select on that, it's my bank, by the way, but right now it is available to 2 of my courses. If I wish, though, I can share this with individuals, right? Other instructors. So for example, I can share this with Lauren if she really wants it. I can give her specific kinds of permissions. Can view will let her use the questions in my bank, but she can't delete them. It also means she can't add to it either. So this is okay if you're trying to support, say, an adjunct who just needs access to your banks. But if I want Lauren to contribute questions so that Lauren and I eventually grow a giant bank of questions because both of us worked on it, we're going to need to have edit permissions given to Lauren. So that lets her add questions. But keep in mind, there's a flip side, right? It also means she could potentially accidentally delete questions. So Lauren and I need to be 100% cool, but we are. You can add multiple people here. And then as you keep sharing your banks out, you'll see a list of who they were shared with. So do keep in mind too, if I'm sharing with Lauren, it means she can use this bank in literally any course she has. On the other hand, if I want to be picky, if Lauren tells me, like she can tell me the name of her course and I can search for it here. So she can only use the bank in that course. Does that make sense? So you can share with a person, but that person means they always have access to everything. Making sure that she can only use it in a course, just make sure that she can just use the questions in that course. So those are your sharing options here. And then right here is a copy function. Actually, it's a duplicate function. This creates an exact duplicate of that bank. And this is helpful for times when you want it so that the person you're sharing with has data on the quiz that it's separate from yours. So in that case, you can make a duplicate of the bank and then give the duplicate to a faculty member. So that means their questions remain theirs. Your questions remain separate with all of your data. Inside of questions two, just to, now that we're inside of a bank, you can edit the question directly in the pencil here, or this copy function right here lets you move questions from one bank to another. So if I click on that copy function for a question, I can keep this in this bank, but then I can put a copy in a different bank. So watch this question. It says function of X, right? It's still going to stay here. You see, it hasn't gone anywhere. But if I check molecular shapes, oh, that's the wrong molecular shapes. If I check on molecular shapes, see here it is right here. Now there's two questions. And so here is that copy of that question. So you can have copies of a question in multiple banks. Or if you just want to move a question from one to another, just uncheck the box. Let's undo this one. Molecular. Now watch, this question is going to disappear. See, it's gone because it's now in that other bank that I moved it to. I think that's definitely enough about item banks for now. Any quick questions before we move on to accommodations and such?
I have one question,
Yes, ma'am.
and that is I want to put announcement in modules because I have everything in modules,
Hmm.
but I could not do that. One way to do it was to go to settings and course detail and then click on more options, but there's no more options. I don't see more options in course details under settings.
If you're just wanting announcements to appear on the home page, that's where you would go to course details for.
Uh-huh.
So it'd be very bottom here. But this will place those announcements on the home page, not in modules.
You cannot go into modules, the announcement.
No, not directly. Although I suppose you could get the link for the announcement and put the link in a module.
Mhm.
But I like this, even if you have this checked off, because you're going to start with the home page being the default. Students will always see announcements on the home page. I don't think you have to have them in modules for them to be effective.
Okay, 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 thank you.
Mhm. All right. So, wondering if there's any other quick questions I can answer before we head into accommodations. All right. I'm going to move on over into my own Canvas because that's where my fake students are. And we'll start with taking a look at the moderate area right here. Ooh, that's what you don't normally see. We'll just refresh that. There we go. Let's try that again. There we go. The system works. So, as soon as your first student starts taking a quiz, you will see a progress message to that effect. So if you're looking for attempts in progress, there is a filter option here where you can choose attempts in progress, and then you'd see who is working on the quiz right at this very second. Otherwise, all attempts will be listed on the moderate area, in the moderate area. And so you're able to see data for each attempt that the student takes, including their score, time taken, and if you have this enabled, I think you do, a quiz log can be accessed here. Accommodations are set right here inside the student's name. So you see where it says time multiplied by 1.5. So if Troy gets his paperwork in, here's how I would enter it so that, and this is great, one of the greatest things about Canvas, your accommodations will be saved here for the entire journey of the student inside this course. You never have to set this again. So when you click on the student's name, you're going to choose under time adjustments, whatever pertains. So time limit multiplier, I imagine, is what most people will want to do. So 1.50 is time and a half. If you need double time, it's 2 times. Otherwise, you can just give a net additional amount of time to every attempt. So always give 10 minutes, for instance. Or you can always have an unlimited time limit, but just for this student. For all of these possibilities, you can reduce answer choices. And if the student is taking this quiz right now, you can have it apply to all in progress attempts for this student right now if you want. So go ahead and hit save, and then your combinations should be saved here. And again, you never have to set this again inside this course. Now, if you need to manage the current attempt of the student, that's what this pencil is for. Now, remember, you can set the number of attempts each student gets inside the settings, and that holds for every individual. But let's say it was a practice opportunity and the student was completing it in their apartment and the internet just died while they were taking the quiz, which it's unfortunate, but it does happen. If their time runs out, Canvas will close the quiz on them. So if they reach out to you and say, "Oh, this happened to me, internet went out," you may just have to give them one additional attempt to make up for that interruption in service. You can also add additional time. So let's say maybe it's a very short internet interruption that happens sometimes. Uh, Maybe their power was out for just 5 minutes. You can add the extra amount of time right here too. You can even reduce answer choices just on the current attempt if you want. You just have to hit apply, and then that will be saved and will affect them for this current administration. Now, when it comes to accessing reports, there's a number of different reports. Um, For one, you can click on the link for any attempt. So this is Bruce. Remember, like you can control what the student sees, but you can see everything. So here's Bruce's results for this particular quiz. And you do have here an option to say add additional comments to Bruce for this question if you want, because you get this box that opens up. You can also change the points awarded. This is, by the way, another way to add extra credit. So if they just did like 2 points worth of extra credit, you could add it to one of the earned accumulated numbers of points here. There's even an option to add points at the very bottom of the log here. So you see here where it says fudge points. So you can even add additional points here. Or by the way, you can do negative points and then just update that. So you can see the details for every single attempt they ever do. If you have logs turned on, and I think you do, you can access a log for each of their attempts, which is data, right? You're able to see their address, IP address. You can even see how quickly they answered questions, right? Gives you a sense as to whether they're rushing or not. If you have multiple browsers detected, this is what the log looks like. See, it's all in red. Tells you right away, oh, there's maybe a conversation to be had about this. In which case it's really easy to tell if there's been some kind of question raised. And then as results come in, you can access that information through reports. I'm going to do that for this other quiz that I have here. Oh, we'll refresh. There we go. You have a quiz and item analysis and a student analysis. It's essentially the same information, except the spreadsheet you get here is listed with student names on the side. Just notice though, you cannot view that report directly inside of Canvas. You have to get a spreadsheet for that. The quiz and item analysis though can be viewed from inside of Canvas. So this is where we're going to start. So when you click on view report, by the way, you can get a spreadsheet for this if you want. You get some stats like the median and the mean, and then clicking on the drop down here, you can get standard deviation, Cronbach's alpha, and there's information modals here. Just kind of gives you kind of a, the TLDR version of what these statistical bits of information mean. And I would say for all of the stats that are available on this page, in general, if your numbers are kind of in the positive 0.5 to 0.6 to 0.7 and up range, you're doing okay. You're doing okay. You just want to watch out for numbers where you see a zero, right? Or negative numbers. So scrolling down here, you'll get an item analysis for each particular question. And then a kind of a clicky drop down arrow where you can see the frequency summary. And then things like item difficulty, discrimination index, correlation coefficient. So again, you're looking for numbers close to +1 or kind of in the positive upper ranges of the range that's given. All right, friends, and that is reports. Other aspects of new quizzes that you might be interested in. I like this for a backup. Sometimes you want to export the questions in this quiz and give that package to someone, in which case you can generate an export package here. Then you can download it and then you can give the zip file to someone. So that's available under export. going back to the main quiz area here. Let's refer, oh, went too far. Let's do it here. So inside the build interface, you also have a 3 dots. If you had essay questions, right, here's one way you can get into SpeedGrader, another way into item banks. If you're one of these folks that like to have backups upon backups, which that might be you, you can even print the quiz. So you can print a blank quiz and then you can print off a key. And as you saw right at the beginning of our hour here together, go back into quizzes. Do it for this quiz here. Remember, there are options always in the 3 dots menu. Here's another way into SpeedGrader, for instance, from the quizzes area. You can also enter, edit, and build here. Here's where you can duplicate that quiz. Remember, you saw that at the top of the hour to copy that exemplar quiz. You can change the assignment due date here. You can also send this quiz to someone. I would just mind that if you're sending this quiz to someone, that you also share the item banks with them in a separate step. And finally, if you want to make this quiz available in a course that you teach, a different one, then choose copy to for that. So right here, you would pick that other course and then a copy of that appears in the other course. In which case you can still use the item banks because they should be your banks. So you can use that to build that out. All right, friends. So I think that is a pretty good general coverage of new quizzes that should serve for now. We've got a little bit of time left for any questions that have cropped up for you. Yeah, multiple answers, that's correct. And we only covered multiple choice, I know, but you should check out the other options. There's some great ones like categorization, ordering, hotspot is great. Fill in the blanks. You can do fill in multiple blanks too. Different grading schemes. I don't know that I would call them schemes. Oh, different point values. Um, I don't think so. Oh, yeah, see, you can have partial credit with penalty or exact match. So then I would choose exact match. So if you made this out of, say, 5 points, and there's only 2 of them that are correct out of the 5, then they have to get both correct to get all 5 points. So yeah, in that case, I would just do exact match. In my experience, like I have found partial credit to be really hard to explain to students. A lot of times I've had to go into the moderate area and add points back if the student felt like they got points taken away. Any other questions for you before I let you go? No, thank you, Sherry. It's nice to see you again. Hope everything's going great.
Thanks, Helen. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. And we'll keep right at it. We'll be seeing a lot of Helen this spring and into the summer.
Okay.
So thank you, Helen. Any
May,
final parting
may I
shots?
have, may I have one question, please?
Sure.
Okay. Where do they get Canvas students? Where would they get technical support? Where would the students get technical support?
Students will have access to the help menu. They can start there.
From MTSU staff.
Well, and yeah, I'm in here as a staff member, but as a student can access the help area and they probably have customized help links for them available in their view. Is that correct?
Lauren, you want to talk about
Yes,
what you just dropped?
They have when the student goes here, there's a chat for students, and it's a 24/7 chat, as well as that Canvas support hotline that's 24/7. And if they are on, or like if it's during the day, they can call our MTSU, or like I believe it's 8 to 6 or so. They put the hours up for different semesters, but MTSU service desk. We also have our Canvas resources where when you go there, you can choose faculty or student. I also posted the student resource link in the chat. And what we're doing is we're building that each time we talk to people and listen to what people are needing. And it walks students through how to access it, how to download the app, how to find their courses, set up their notifications, like personalize their course, view content, submit an assignment. So they'll also have those as well. So is that?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you
You're
very
welcome.
much. Okay.
And the
All right.
app is very useful. So I highly recommend that you encourage them to download the app.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Thanks, Helen. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We hope to see you in the near future for another Canvas training. See you soon.
Well, soon. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.